many businesses simply don't understand how to price properly, and that's a big reason for business failure. Really, what about you? Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think pricing is where it all goes wrong, because that's where you don't get the call or you do get the call. I think it's having an intimate understanding of your client and where they are. I think post-COVID, you need to think to yourself, what margins am I willing to cut back on just to win this client and get the ball rolling? But it's also bearing the fact that you can't cut back too far and then expect in a year's time that you've increased your pricing 100%. It's a gradual journey. First get in. Yeah. And then work your way from there.
But Nonku, there's a flip side to that as well. So you might have to manage margins slightly, but on the other side, often people as a survival strategy go in too low, selling a premium product, and then they suddenly realize that they're in all sorts of difficulty from that end. So strategically then, how do you look at pricing?
So what we try when we are working with entrepreneurs, whether we invested or not, is have them understand how to cover your bare minimum costs to deliver the service. If your costs are 20,000 rands to deliver the service, don't offer it at 10,000 rands, because then you've got a shortfall and it has to come from somewhere.
And it's a sign of desperation.
And it's a sign of desperation. But for the other person on the other side, they feel like they've got a bargain. But what happens is that because you've undercut yourself so much, you can't even afford to keep that service going. You can't maintain that relationship because you're stretched. So you need to be realistic around how much does it cost me to deliver the service or maintain the relationship. Cost it fairly, and if you need to negotiate, have that conversation, but be clear that these are my costs that I require to run my business and to give you a quality service.
And have that honest, upfront conversation, because often people don't like to negotiate, do they?
Negotiation is key. I think the payment terms is the name of the game now. There's no need to ask for the full price upfront. It's what will get you going. And I think it depends on strategically what you're solving for with your client, Jeremy. If this is a long-term thing, you got to have a portion and say, look, maybe I'll take 40% upfront. But I know that if I help my client achieve X and Y, that there should be an upside for me. And that's where the variability comes in the pricing. But it comes in the negotiation to understand the appetite, but for them also to show that, this guy's got skin in the game. He's willing to walk the journey with me, but it's going to cost. And I think it's just about having the robust conversation.
So folks, brace yourselves now. We've spoken about saving money. Here comes that word that we all hate as entrepreneurs. Deep breath, cash flow. So first of all, I'm going to ask a really stupid question. I don't mind, one of you can pick it up. Give me a good definition of cash flow.
Cash flows is how you manage your money over time to keep the business alive and consistent over an extended period of time. And I think we shouldn't look at it as just, think about it, how do you keep the lights on and keep your clients satisfied? Because you need to do both. Do you need to is it important for you to have a website? Yes or no? You might need to not have that cash flow to necessarily have that website. So that's a cash flow item that you don't necessarily need to have. It's about whether it's relevant for your business and your client.
And this is something that you need to look at every single day, if not every single hour in the business. And we've done a lot of these programs now, and that message has been rammed home to me time and time again. It's not something that you can put off until a Friday. You need to be on this every single moment. You would agree with that?
No, definitely. And I think it's very easy for expenses to get away from you. You sign up for a 7-day trial and you forgot when the 7th day actually hits and now the bill runs. But you're having
how often hasn't that happened?
I mean, that happened to me this morning, which is why I'm using it as an example. Is that you need to keep an eye on, one, is this a priority item? Is this a must-have? Is it a short-term item that I need to get over a little bit of a hurdle? But you need to understand where you are. And like you said, you need to know on a daily basis where your business is, because that's also the health of your business. You can't afford to wait for Friday and find that all these trials that you had running for 7 days have all hit on Thursday, and now you're sitting on a negative balance. You need to know where your business are, so you have to pay close attention.
So let's pick up on that phrase, negative balance, if we can. It's also about collection. It's about getting money from customers. picking up the phone. I want my
You
money.
have to be the bad cop.
You have to,
You've
yeah.
done your part of the deal, but I think it's also being considerate in the environment that you're in. That everybody's going through a tough
So
time.
there's an empathy quotient. I get that, but
Correct.
you've got to.
Don't push it more than 90 days. If you're typically operating between 30 and 60 days, you should also know what your threshold is. Some companies can't go more than 50 days, but you come to an amicable term, but you have to play the bad cop and you have to be on the pulse, because that's actually how people get away with it. They forget, oh, I forgot. But what does that mean for your business?
Okay, folks, I want to park collections for just a moment and let's move on to something which is equally critical, and that is speed to market. In other words, converting inventory into sales. You got to be doing that, and it's a turbine. It's moving all the time. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think in our case, we invest in technology businesses. So it's not a cookie cutter approach. It is different for each business. And it's also different in terms of which industry or sector they operate in. And for us, if you look at logistics, that sales cycle is quite long. You have to get in front of the cargo owners. You have to get in front of the cargo brokers, convince them of the value proposition. That could be a 3-4 month cycle. But if you're a SaaS platform or software as a service, once someone has bought a subscription, it's immediate. You get your revenue every single month, and that sales cycle is very, very short. But you're also competing with a lot of platforms that offer similar products. So I think that speed to market does depend on the industry. But you have to be clear as to what you're trying to achieve, right? So you do find that, as we were talking about discounts earlier, you almost have to have the same approach for customers. If you are operating in an industry where there are a lot of competitors that are offering similar value propositions, you would then have to start with the 7-day trial that we also spoke about. So you can prove your value proposition and actually prove that the solution is the best fit for them. That will then lead you to a longer sales cycle as opposed to having someone sign up and converting on day one. But you need to understand where you can be flexible and when you need to convert.
So it's about speed to market, but it's also not rushing in, that you've got to, again, be careful and strategic and judicious about the process. Otherwise, if you move too quickly, you'll make mistakes as well.
Correct. And I think you also need to have a clear view of what it is that you're selling. We can continually have conversations with our clients and they'll wander off and you veer away from what your core. I think having a clear...
Particularly if it's a service.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in the space that we're in, we need to have a clear value proposition in terms of our product catalog, in terms of the various services that we're offering clients, and know what the different margin points are, and also that sales cycle. Strategy assignment, I could have a conversation for almost 2 years talking around their journey until they say, okay, cool, let's do this. But on smaller assignments, you data analytics, operations improvement, that's a much more quicker one to turn around, but you need to stay top of mind of your client and always follow up, be relevant.
You've just made reference to something called the sales cycle. What is that, and how does an entrepreneur understand that?
I think around the sales cycle as a sales funnel. Think around how do you go from your initial client conversation where you've identified the client all the way to get to going through each of the stages of showing your first proposal all the way to deal negotiation to closing the deal. So you got to think of it, how many clients do I have now? If you've got 10, what's your target to the deals close? It may just be one, but that sales cycle, the length of it depends on terms of the conversation and also the internal process that the client needs to sign off on that check. Typically, the sales process can take anywhere from 3 months to a year, but it could happen in a day based on a conversation. It's just on the size and the nature of the client and also how you nurture it. If you're quick to market and you've got the right pricing, you could close it in a day.
Relebogile, I'm going to give you the final word on this and back to technology and opportunities. So let's agree that it's the vital enabler, and entrepreneurs need to try technology, experiment, read, keep up to date, and don't shunt it to the margins. It's the future success of your business.
100%. And I think it helps you think around how to position for the future, because the digital is the future, but it is here today. I think you need to figure out how to use technology to accelerate and scale your business, because you don't necessarily need to do that with people. There's a plethora of applications that one can use in a small business, all the way from your back office through to your front office that can help you through digital platforms scale. We've been able to use tech to collaborate and work with people anywhere in the world. And I think digital disruption has told you that, the world is available to you now. It's just around how you position yourself in the world, and you're clear around what market you're going for, because we can throw this word digital around, but if your market is in the township, how does digital apply to them? You need to make sure that you've got a 2G, 3G web solution that they can access on a non-WhatsApp enabled phone. So I think you've got to think around what's relevant for your end clients. I think we throw this word around, but I just think around how do you position yourself best for the future? We've invested in some technology around operations and how you can use tech to see how your old equipment is operating, and you don't need to have your enterprise, your servers on-prem. You can have it in the cloud. So I think there's lots of ways, and I think it's also learning. It's an area of learning development that everyone can find in themselves, to find something in digital to help them grow in themselves, personally and in a business.
Folks, you have given us an immense amount of information today, and a lot for entrepreneurs to chew over and to think about. Thank you both for joining me.
Thank you very much.